IMAX CEO Richard Gelfond. Richard, good afternoon to you. Thanks so much for joining us. So talk us through this Chinese weekend and what you think drove it specifically, whether it was just a sort of pent-up demand issue or whether it will be repeatable for you in the months and years ahead.
Well, nice to be with you, Wilfred. I mean, we expected there to be a pretty good weekend, but beating your old record by 45%, especially since it's an interesting time of year. Chinese New Year is when it all shut down last year. So a few days before is when the global pandemic started. And I think there were a lot of factors. By the way, what IMAX did particularly well, but the industry itself is up 33% from its record in 2019. So that means they sold this weekend about 90 million tickets. Just put that in the context of the U.S. I think the only thing you could say is it's pent-up demand, that people just got tired of sitting on their couches and, watching streaming or whatever else they did. And I think they're just happy to get out. And I think it foreshadows the rest of the world. I know there's been a narrative going around now that, people are going to get out of the movie going habit. People will be happy to sit on their couches. But I just completely disagree with it. And you look at those results in China, not just in IMAX, but everywhere. It tells you when it's safe to go outside and people want to go, they're going to run to go to the movies. And
just update us, Richard, on what exactly the restrictions are in China. We just saw some video there. Everyone's obviously wearing a mask, but there were quite a lot of people there. What capacity restrictions are there, and when do you think this sort of weekend can take place in the U.S.?
Well, thanks for asking that, because it's actually a very good question. This all happened while there were 75% capacity limitations, which meant 25% of the theaters people weren't allowed in. In Beijing, because they were being even more careful, there were 50% capacity limitations. So they're not 100% open yet, and they're having these kinds of results. The U.S. is just a very complicated question, and for a variety of reasons. One is the studios are all located in Hollywood and Los Angeles, and they look out their window and they see some of the worst COVID in the United States, and in the world, as a matter of fact, and they haven't decided when to open Hollywood movies. And I think it becomes a little myopic when you're in a place where the case rate is so high. You also have the pace of vaccinations going on in the country. You also have other major places like New York that are effectively closed. About 30% of the box office in the U.S. is open right now, and probably around 60% of the theaters. But until you get the films available, and until you get enough vaccines in arms, you don't know. I know you're going to press me on my guess, and anybody's guess is as good as mine. But if you ask me now, I would say something like May, June for opening, and I'm hoping by the summer it's back to quasi-normal.
Well, what are you seeing in the 30% that is open, Richard? And in places like New York, they did start indoor dining recently. Is it fair? Is it unsafe to go to movie theaters in this environment?
It's funny because there was an article in some European journal, a scientific one, and it's 14 times more dangerous to go to a restaurant than a movie theater. And you actually don't have to be an epidemiologist to understand why. And that is because in a movie theater, you're wearing masks and you're looking at the back of someone's head. And on the screen, it's a passive experience. In a restaurant, you take it off to talk. There's waiters interacting. There are people interacting. So, in fact, movie theater is much safer. The reason that's such a good question is Governor Cuomo just announced that they're going to open sports arenas. So it's hard for me to understand, screaming people who have drank a lot of beer, talking to each other, yelling, high-fiving is in fact safer than sitting in a passive movie theater. But, becoming a cynic as this goes on, I think it has as much to do with politics and constituencies as it has to do with safety. I think if it was up to safety, the theaters would be open now like they are in most states in the country.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.